Howdy, and welcome to another episode of Adult Onset Horsemanship. I'm your host, Daniel Dauphin.
For this episode of Adult Onset Horsemanship, we've got two guests, and this one is going to get a little bit into the legislation and animal rights and animal welfare and all of that stuff. So one of our guests is maybe the biggest champion and warrior that we have got on the side of agriculture and horses and all of that in the United States right now, Mr. Dave Duquette. He was a Marine. He has been a horse trainer. He got his feet wet into all of this stuff with Protect the Harvest, and now he heads up the organization Western Justice that is out there fighting for our survival, quite frankly, at this point in time. We've also been joined this morning by Colton Woods, who Dave has hand tapped to take his place, even though I don't know if Colton is on board with that yet, because frankly, we're having a conversation with some guys with balls here. So maybe some of you will believe that's toxic masculinity. I would say we're going to get into protection and service and duty with this conversation. So Colton is a horse trainer. He's also in the entrepreneurial world, helping other horse trainers like myself to feed our families and pay bills on time. So I am joined by two fine gentlemen this morning. How are y'all doing today?
Doing excellent.
Fantastic. Looking forward to it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, just before we get into the heavy stuff, we're going to start y'all off with the lightning round questions and kind of break the ice a little bit. We'll just do it one after another. So I'll start with you, Dave. Morning or evening?
Morning.
Morning.
All right. How long do you dunk a cookie in milk?
I'm on a carnivore diet, so I don't do it anymore.
I'm sorry, Dave, that's wrong. The correct answer is just like a politician, you hold them under until the bubbles stop coming up. Colton, how about you?
Honestly, man, I'm not a sweets guy myself. We're on the raw milk and just primal diet here around here. We're drinking a bunch of sheep's milk and eating steak. So that's kind of how it goes here at the ranch. Fair enough.
No, I lost 45 pounds since January just because of because I decided to have a heart attack at 58 years old. So I got through that, made it through that, obviously. And I went on the carnivore diet and thought, I'm going to do it. And I've dropped 45 pounds. So I'm not the fat bastard I was for the last 10 years.
That stuff's hard to argue. I don't know why there's not more research on it and everything. I guess it fights kind of the big pharma and all of that sort of stuff, the establishment. But man, there's so many people with anecdotal evidence of how much it's changed their lives. It's not even funny. And then of course we got some of these 45-year-old vegans that look like they're 78 out there telling us how we're really supposed to live, right? If you came across somebody playing the bagpipes, would you hit them with a shoe, a boot, or just a closed fist?
Great. I'm always entertained by anything like that somebody that can do that stuff and pay enough attention long enough to figure that out and how to do it. So I would probably sit there and just listen to them. I wouldn't be able to hit them with anything. Plus, them little Irishmen and Scotsmen, they're pretty ornery. So I just, I'm not thinking I want to pick a fight with a bagpipe player because he's pretty dedicated.
It takes a special guy to be commando with a skirt on, no doubt about that.
Exactly.
That's the damn truth. We were down at got invited down to Oktoberfest down. They did a little celebration down here in Fort Worth, and it was fun. They had bagpipes out there and everything, and it was like a couple good beers, good people, different culture. Hell yeah, But yeah, if you're going around commando, with a dress on, basically, I don't know that I really want to get in a fight with you. Yeah. I'm not going to start it. Let's put it that
way. Yeah, you end up like one of those inner city TikTok videos where there's all kinds of body parts flying around in those fights. So yeah, I don't think I'd be interested in that either.
No.
I never thought about it from that aspect, but hey, it's a good aspect.
Just absolutely. If you had a guy that was wanting to fight you and he starts taking his clothes off, that changes the whole direction of that's
100%.
Getting punched is one thing, but wrestling with a naked guy, there's a lot more motivation not to do that, I think. Favorite way to treat aches and pains. So part of this business is it comes with aches and pains. So do y'all have any sauna, cold showers, ice baths, Advil every morning? How do you handle it?
I get up every morning that I'm home anyway and get in the hot tub, stretch my, the big problem with horse trainers and people who have done that for a long time is usually your sciatic or your lower, that it's the psoas muscle that gets really, or it's either a muscle or a tendon that goes from the front of your legs up over the back of your hips and rotates. When it gets atrophied from sitting down all day, it gets atrophied, and that's what makes it hard. I actually quit training full time in probably 2012 just because of my back. I didn't think I'd be riding because it felt like I had an ice pick sticking in my. I mean, if a horse took a weird step on a cow and jarred that one of those back legs in the ground or stabbed the ground, it felt like somebody was poking me with an ice pick. So once I went to a sports therapist, chiropractor and sports therapist, she released that, and I about shit a ring around myself when she was doing it because it hurt dirty bad. And she finally got those released and taught me how to stretch that stuff. And now I can go ride and because I broke my lower back in the Marine Corps. So that was, and nobody ever knew it till 10 years after I was out of the Marine Corps. They saw all the calcium deposits. I guess it wasn't bad enough that I quit doing what I was doing. And anyway, we ended up, I've had some pretty good lower back issues. So yeah, that's add one Advil in the morning, one at night before I go to bed. And then I get up and get in the hot tub and loosen everything up, and I'm rolling.
Heck yeah. I'm a cold shower kind of guy. Ice baths are pretty regular around here. That helps quite a bit. We try to eat healthy. I think prevention's 9/10 of the law a lot. So just eating healthy. Don't stretch as much as I used to, but I mean, I've run myself down into adrenal fatigue 3 different times where my body was like, "You're not moving." And so today the game is making sure that we've got enough outlets because I like to run hard. So eating healthy, making sure we're staying active, and then I went through it's basically a sports therapist, but it was a company that basically their whole motive was to keep you out from going to surgery because my L5S1 was fused when I was born. So my lower back takes a lot of heat a little bit higher up. And so we've been going to that place. I go about once a month now. I started going 3 times a week, then it was 2 times a week, then it was 1 time a week, then it was, it just gradually break it down. But for any horse trainers, any of us that are doing this for a living, anything that's physical around, I mean, they tell you, right, you only got one body, but it seems that we don't really learn that until it basically doesn't work anymore. And then you're like, okay, I actually can't make a living doing what I'm doing. So, so I go to the chiropractor pretty regularly, try to do the ice showers, ice baths, those sorts of things. And just eat right. Don't eat a bunch of shit, to keep the inflammation down. I think most of us are more dehydrated than we actually realize. And I can drink black coffee in the 105-degree Texas heat and stand out there in the arena and drink hot coffee and be fine. But I usually got to tell myself, go get some electrolytes. And I'll tell you guys, I tell anybody that's listening to this that I didn't realize I was going part of it. I did everything from I had to have injections in my back to loosen up muscles because I was so tight, and it didn't matter how much manipulation we did. My body wouldn't let loose. And finally, the doctor I was seeing, he was like, I think you're short on, either you're short on potassium or you're short on phosphorus or something like that. And I started taking a electrolyte, just got 4 basic minerals in it. And I started taking that and I sweated my ass off for 3 days. I didn't know what was wrong with me. And he's like, oh, you were deficient. And I was holding all these toxins and my body finally got the right mineral, and I was drinking plenty of water. and just released it. And that was what actually enabled me to start to loosen up quite a bit. And that helped my lower back. That helped my whole body quite a bit. And so every day it's water and electrolytes around here because your body's got to have those ingredients, at the end of the day. So the little things, it's not even complicated. It's simple.
I got this is the first thing I drink after I drink coffee, and it's got a little electrolyte packet in it that's the 0 calorie, 0 sugar kind of electrolytes. So that's what I take it every morning.
100%.
Yep. I have to say I'm a super sweater. So I sweat way more than most people do. So staying hydrated in the summertime, I have to wake up drinking in the morning. That's my motto. I wake up drinking, and I'm if I don't start before I'm thirsty, I'll never catch up for the rest of the day. And magnesium has been the one for me that's helped a lot. Colton helps with sleeping too, but muscle cramps and that kind of stuff. So that, and then I started drinking my water bottle. I put a little bit of apple cider vinegar and a little bit of salt in there, and that's been a game changer for me for sure. So Dave, you brought up something a second ago that's making me ask another question in honor of your Marine Corps background there. Green or red crayons, what's your favorite flavor?
Oh, red for sure.
All right, it's the only right answer. Yes, sir.
I was actually I had JD Vance coming out to Pendleton for a lunch, and then it turned into a rally. We were going to do it because we couldn't, because it was going to be during Pendleton Roundup when there's 30,000 extra people in town every day. And so we were going to do it in a B-17 hangar where actually the Doolittle Raiders trained back. I mean, 79 of the 80 Doolittle Raiders trained it out of this old hangar that's up there at the Pendleton Airport. And I mean, it's like walking into 1940 when you walk into this building. It's just a bitchin' cool historical building. And I had ordered a giant crayon that because I was going to give it to JD when he got there, but I haven't got to see him yet in person, so I haven't been able to give him that crayon. Actually, I was gonna take 2, and I was gonna have him sign one for me, and then, but they're 12-inch or 15-inch crayons, so they're pretty. It would have been pretty funny, but oh well, we didn't get it done because they were focusing on the battleground states, and they couldn't get up there for the round that we were at that time frame. So, which I'm glad they're focusing on the battleground states and they're getting stuff done because we need to get them in there.
They get in there, and you might have 4 years to give them that crayon.
Yeah. That's what I'm hoping for. We got, I think there's going to be a reckoning if he gets in there, especially USDA wise, Interior Department wise, EPA, all the things that I deal with from a ranching from our side. Because with Western Justice, I really got in a lane and focused our scope more because at Protect the Harvest, we were just all over the board. I mean, we were from puppies to all of that kind of stuff. And with Western Justice, I've really narrowed the focus to my world, my particular world, which is the ranching community, the Western horse world, and the rodeo world. So that's where we've narrowed our focus to. But if you think about that, anything that comes out of the Interior Department that's going to affect ranching, or anything that comes out of the USDA that's going to affect ranching, or the EPA, is all going to affect mining, all of our natural resource stuff. So every farmer, producer, whether it's Simplot or any of those kind of groups that are doing mining, timber, or oil and gas, it's all going to affect those people too. The same thing. So that's where, bringing a coalition of all those groups together is going to be powerful. And I think we have that started, and we're going to be golden as long as we get, a change of administration.
We'll just hope the people that did die of COVID don't come back and vote the wrong way, huh?
No doubt.
What skill or technique do you not have with a horse that you admire in someone else and wish you did have? This could be
driving.
This could run the gambit. Could be farrier work, body work, anything.
Driving and packing. Those are the things that I never learned to do. And I've got friends that do it. I mean, my whole horse industry life I came up in an area, a bunch of dryland wheat farmers back in the day when, they were the first generation out of using horses, for pulling the combines and the plows and all that stuff. And I used to look at all the old pictures and of the big teams and that cool stuff. And there were still some of them that had some and would go to those competitions. They were keeping that tradition alive. And I just never learned to do any of that. I mean, I've got some cool old paraphernalia from, the old days of driving and different pieces of gear and things like collars and stuff like that. But I never spent the time to learn any of that stuff. And I'd love to be able to do that. And packing, I've never packed a damn thing. I wouldn't even know how to put a pack rig on a horse or a mule and go do that. But I'm also having been, having my early career of riding, I was riding a lot of shit. I mean, and most of them wanted to torture you and they weren't very nice. Or I was on a ranch where they didn't bring the horses in to even get started. They never got touched until they were 5, 6 years old. And I mean, these were some dirty, nasty, bred to be tough, go out and pound rocks all day, and they were pretty nasty to deal with. And so I didn't trust horses near enough on the cliffhangers and stuff like that. I just didn't trust them. I was always worried that they were going to take a step or whirl around or go do something really stupid. So the cliff hanging stuff I never really wanted to do. I'm not a thrill seeker that way. I'll go ride a horse that wants to buck. That I enjoy. But the trying to go be in the mountains where you're straight up one side and straight down the other side, they can keep that kind of thrill seeking stuff to all they can keep that to themselves. They can go do that.
Yeah, I mean, around here we kind of joke that it's horses and homesteading is kind of like what we've got going on, because the business side of what we do runs so fast paced. Daniel knows, like, it's just go, and then with our horse side, it's part of the business. So there's an element of trying to enjoy it, but also like, hey, this is what does help keep the lights on and make the ranch payment and those sorts of things. And the homesteading portion is something like, I didn't grow up in agriculture. I grew up like far away from ag, and parents were like, we lived in town, all the stuff. And so, it was a joke that every year for Christmas, I'd ask for a horse, a cow, and a rope and 25 acres. And it's like, it made no sense growing up in town. Like, my parents were like, what's wrong with this kid? Like, where did the hell did this come from? And honestly, I think it was like God planted that seed for me to like have to build a certain lifestyle later on. And so the homesteading is, I love processes and taking care of providing for our family and raising our own food and that sort of stuff. And so when Dave, you were talking about watching like teams of horses work, right? When you watch them like harvest hay or pack hay back to a barn and stack it up. And, there's parts of me that I'm like, man, I got a horse out here. If I could teach it to pull a plow, I could just turn the garden over with a plow. I've got a gas run one, but there's just part of me that wants that balance in life where you're running so hard. And then something like that enables you and forces you to slow down and to just go back to a time where it's like you need to be present with your horses, with the land, with nature that's going on. And I think I can only imagine dealing with politicians and lawyers and stuck in a courtroom and like doing all this stuff. And like, it's just a whole different dynamic. And then you get out into a ranch setting and you're like, ooh. And that's for us what the homesteading portion is a lot is me trying to find that balance of release from the constant pressure that comes from other parts of the business. So, that skill of like that I don't have it very much is kind of the Amish skills, right? Like of watching how the Amish utilize horses, and people might be like, oh, well, they abuse them, and it's like that's not the point. Like the point is like those horses have a job, they have a purpose, and those horses know their job, and and the skill set that goes along with being able to teach those horses how to do those things. And I think I'm always, everything I do, it has purpose to it. Like if I find out that I'm doing something that doesn't have purpose, I'm like, fuck it, like get rid of it. Like it's a waste of time. And so when I see like horses that have a job, then I think they all benefit from having a job, just like people. And it's just like, give them a job. They have a purpose. They have value. And so yeah, that's probably it. I've never packed anything either. Like I just haven't had the opportunity. I'm too damn busy to go on a pack trip, and I'd love to. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at on that one, Daniel.
Maybe we'll get some time sometime, Colton. You and I can go on a pack trip with somebody and just I've got a lot of friends that invite me on stuff like that, and try to get somebody to take us on one and just see it and do it. I'd love to do it. Just to go say I did it and actually see it.
Well, thanks for the invite there, Dave.
Like just getting the perspective of like how certain horses can fit into certain purposes. Like, not every horse is going to make a certain or a cutter or reiner, or a just jumping horse. And it's being able to see how those skill sets apply. Like I remember the first time I went and flew with horses, I got invited and this guy's like, what are you doing tomorrow? And I'm like, training horses, man. And he's like, what? He's like, well, we're going to go fly horses from Lexington, Kentucky to San Bernardino, California. And then we're going to skip back to Louisiana, Palm Beach, back to Kentucky the next day. And I got to jump on that plane and go fly with a bunch of thoroughbred weanlings that had been sale prep for the Keeneland sales. They just sold. They were going to go fly to California and get flown to Texas and Louisiana for the winter so they get started. And just being able to see some of those babies had never left the farm, right? And they got taken to Keeneland, run through the sale, then turn around the next morning, put on a plane, and walked them up a damn ramp. Didn't put them. They're not in cargo containers. Yeah. Right. Like trailer pulls up to the ramp, we let them up, backed them into a slot, built the next row, backed the next one in. Bunch of thoroughbred colts, right? Mainly colts. I think we had 21 or 24 horses on there, and I think 19 of them were stud colts. But just to see like how adaptable those horses were in that environment, and also the skills that the guys that have been doing it for years, 15, 20 years they've been on that deal, watching them, how they handle horses and a different style of horsemanship and skill set that goes into that. So that you can then, for me, when I'm doing groundwork, I'm like, hey, it's no different than trailer loading. It's no different than putting a horse on a plane, and to see, it's just cool to have that. You can't replace those experiences. So I'm down to go on a pack trip anytime. We got to find time in the schedule. That's the hard part. And I got 2 little kids too now. So
Daniel, you're invited too, just so you know.
Thank you.
Your comment flew right over my head. I was like, and I didn't realize that I didn't say, hey, let's all go on one. We can all go on.
Y'all can have your own bromance. That's fine. I won't be jealous
can dress
or anything.
You, with that big gray beard. We can dress you up like Stinky Pete and get some good pictures. It'll be nice.
I'm game, man. One of the benefits about this is, so I grew up rural area. I always looked older than I was, which includes now I look 60, but I'm actually 47. But when I was 15, I could buy beer without getting carded. Confidently put it on the counter. I looked plenty old enough, walk out the door. It was good then. I'm assuming my sons won't listen to this podcast. So. Colton, one thing that brought up about kids and homesteading and the rural versus urban thing. Imagine if we just added as like a requirement in 5th grade for every student that they had to hand make butter. We gave them some whole milk in a mason jar and they had to sit there and shake that for 20 minutes until they formed butter in it. The different perspective they would have on where their food comes from and what is involved in doing this and all of that kind of stuff. Just imagine if we had a few little projects like that every kid across the nation went through. They would realize that butter doesn't come from a grocery store. It comes from, a process that starts with an animal and all of that stuff. Like you're drinking sheep's milk.
It'd just be nice if the education's yeah. Go ahead, Dana, about the sheep's milk thing.
I was going to say, I mean, so milking a cow is one thing. You at least get enough milk there to do something with, but you don't milk a sheep. I'm assuming you're milking 6 sheep or something to wind up with enough milk in the end. That's why the sheep's milk cheeses are some of the most expensive cheeses in the world. So how do y'all work that?
It's pretty interesting. So like, you get a milk cow, right? Like you're going to deal with 3-4 gallons of milk a day. Right now, we go through a lot of milk. And I drink a ton of milk. I drink my coffee black, but I was never weaned. Let's put it that way, right? Like I will suck down 4 gallons of milk a week easily. And it's probably what allows me to keep weight on, because if I'm not eating enough throughout the day, I can come in, I can be burning, sweating hot, and I can chug, half a gallon of milk and have no problem. My wife thinks it's disgusting, but it's enough calories to keep me afloat. And so the sheep though, the sheep's milk actually is twice as dense in nutrients than goat's milk or cow's milk. So it has twice the amount of protein, twice the amount of nutrients, amino acids, minerals in it. Because you think about sheep raising multiple 2-3 babies at a time, they're not always having a high quantity volume, but they have to still have enough nutrients in it. So it's the most dense milk in terms of fat, protein. So it's twice as calorically dense as cow's milk. So you have to be careful, depending on what you're trying to do with your body score, because, if you're sucking down sheep's milk like you drink cow's milk, you're probably going to pack on some pounds. But with that being said, like the sheep that we have are oriented to be dairy sheep. So they'll give like somewhere between, in peak lactation, it's 3/4 of a gallon to a gallon a day per sheep.
Damn.
So quite a bit. And I just actually went on a sheep run this week to get a few more for spring lambing. And so what we're actually going to do is we're going to have probably 6 in milk next spring, and we can freeze it, and it freezes just the same. And so we're going to milk them through there and then freeze a bunch of it. And then we'll basically have a full year's supply of that, to where it's just raw milk, healthy. Like we got young kids and all that sort of thing. And so, yeah, as far as the cheese goes though, it's actually, because it's more dense in protein, fat, minerals, and all that stuff, it's more efficient transition. So it's like, I was reading it actually last night because my wife Meredith was asking me about it, and it's like, it takes like 10 pounds of cow's or goat's milk to make a pound of cheese, but it takes 6 pounds of sheep's milk to make a pound of cheese. So it's more efficient, right? So overall, right, you might be using a whole day's worth of milk to make a pound of cheese, but your ratio wise, you're more efficient, and efficiency might as well be my middle name. So I'm always looking for ways like, how's this ratio work? And they're a lot cheaper. We just let them graze around the farm. And then we had goats, and the goats screamed at me all fucking day when I was trying to ride horses, and it was driving me nuts. And we had to breed them back, right, to keep them milking. And I was like, this is not saying I don't want to eat goats, right? I'm not interested, but I will eat lamb. I will eat lamb every week if you give me the choice. So we switched to sheep because it was more of a sustainable circle, to where I'm like, cool, we have baby lambs, raise them up, sell a few, eat a few, drink plenty of milk, have cheese. So that's my spiel.
I get whole milk from a local gal that, and I just love it. Molly, she my better half, she don't like it, that it's too thick for her. But I'm like you, I could chug a lot of milk. But I hate going, like, when there's a time when I can't go get some whole milk from this gal. I hate having to go buy, vitamin D milk at the store. I want that good milk. And I talked to her about, we've got sheep, we've got Dorpers, but we've got sheep just for training dogs. So we've got a bunch of ewes. We got a bunch of ewes, but no rams. We don't want to. We tried the whole having a ram out there and lambing and doing all that, and it was the biggest pain in the ass and work. And then half of them die, and or the moms won't take the other one, or they'll have 2 and won't take it. So we don't have time for that, and so we're keeping we keep 6 or 7 of them here all the time just to train dogs on, because Molly raises some. We raise some really nice border collies, and they're just having those few sheep around to be able to train them young dogs on is amazing. But yeah, I'm a whole milk and I got a steer and a half in the freezer. I got clients, 4-H kids for clients that I give lessons to and go to cow horse shows with, and they raise a couple extra every year. So to pick, they're lucky enough the parents can afford to raise a few extra, and and they sell me half or a whole. I bought a whole last year and I ran out. So now I bought a steer and a half this year. So I've got 2 big freezers full of really good meat.
Well, I did a special side question for Dave there, and Colton. Now that we know all the sheep milk that you're drinking, do you have a particular baby powder brand to recommend when you give yourself the sheep milk scours? And by the way, I saw how you slickly tried to change your middle name there to Efficiency, and I just want it known. No, your middle name is the Cinderella of cats, and we're not changing that. You're stuck with it, man.
All right, yeah, we'll roll with the branding. Yeah, you've made it pretty wide and clear. So
you named it yourself, man. I mean,
yeah. Oh man, that's funny.
Okay, so this came up not long ago. I don't know if y'all are familiar with the hobby horse deal on the internet. And I had to ask the question to my Facebook followers because I was not sure if this was real or one of the internet's more elaborate jokes. And they assure me that it's real. So if someone you hadn't worked with before and they show up to like a clinic or for a lesson or something, and instead of pulling a horse out the trailer, they pull a broomstick with a horse head on it and they want a lesson for hobby horsing, how are you going to handle that?
I'd be fairly entertained. I know that. Probably work my arena a little bit deep because they wouldn't last very long. and it would be it would be fairly entertaining, but I'm kind of known as more of a drill instructor, kind of a horse trainer and coach. So I'm not for everybody. I'm for the people that really want to go win and work hard to learn everything. And I'm not one of those trainers that tells you just enough to get by and leave your horse and I'll fix it kind of a guy. You keep your horse at home. I don't have time to ride your horses all day long. And I've kind of always been that way. I've never been one of those people that go out and those trainers that ride all their non-pro horses in the open stuff. I'm like, that's your horse. And honestly, most of my clientele over the years were all blue collar workers that they could afford one horse and they could afford to go to the horse shows, but they couldn't afford any more than that. So I never wanted to ride other people's horses and do all that stuff. I know that's a little deeper than where you were going with the hobby horse deal, but that's my deal. Most people I've got a lot more people that want to come ride over here than I'll allow to come ride over here. And there was a time back in the 90s when I had 21 non-pros I hauled to reining horse shows. And I was a marriage counselor, a therapist. I was everything. You know what I'm talking about, Colton. Both of you guys probably do. But I was getting accused of sleeping with people's wives because their wives come over to my place all the time, and I never ever did that. But it was one of those things that it burned me out big time. And then I got to where I only wanted. I got to a point now where I'm doing this stuff, the political stuff so much that I only have a certain amount of time. And I've got a few very dedicated non-pros that I enjoy. They know that they can't come over and bitch to me and cry to me and be a pain in the ass, because that's the cancer that kills every barn as far as I'm concerned. You get a large group of them, and it's like a cancer. One starts bitching about something or complaining, and then all of a sudden you lose half your clientele in a matter of a couple months. And I am what I am, and if you can't handle me yelling at you, then and making it so you're safe, especially in the cow horse. The cow horse is so, I mean, it's controlled aggression on the fence work. And if you're not being smart about how you're doing it, and you don't go out and do the right thing and listen and learn how to do it correctly, you're gonna get hurt, or you're gonna hurt your horse, or you're gonna, something's gonna happen. So I'm kind of a stickler, a little bit of a drill instructor. Well, I shouldn't say a little bit, probably a lot, most of them would say. But and one of the first things I say when they walk in the pen is, am I going to be able to, if you can't handle me today, just tell me and you go lope your horse around, exercise your horse. But if you, and they all say yes, I can. But the group I have now are pretty darn good, so I don't have to worry about them. And I got a great group of parents for my youth kids. My youth kids, I've got 3 youth kids, and the parents are like, yeah, go ahead and chew their ass. I don't care. We strive for excellence, not for mediocre or for somebody to be able to sit there and pout and cry.
Well, this will be how y'all know if I ever hit the lottery. I'm going to buy out some clinics in total for a select group of friends and fill them with hobby horse people, and they'll have no idea until they show up.
Yeah, I like Dave's idea of dragging that arena pretty deep, but I normally start any of my clinics and my lessons, especially if it's a private deal, like, hey, just go warm your horse up. Let me go ahead and see what you're working with, and let me see what you normally do. Because I think that'd be about the most entertaining damn thing, is like, go out there, warm up. Let me see you warm up. And then I want you to work on a few things of what you came to get better at, so I can see what you're dealing with. And let's just, at that point, I might use the broom to sweep them out of the arena once we get done, because yeah, I might have to have some fun with it. Fun is not high on my priority list a lot of times, but we might have to have some fun with that one.
Yeah.
What is the most important quality of a horseman in your mind? And it could be a few. It doesn't have to be one. I'm not a top 10 list kind of guy. I would have a group. So, Dave,
I've always told the kids that have come to work for me, the young guys that apprentices, whether it's guy or gal comes in, I operate on an ask, tell, demand kind of a thing with my horses. And I'm always going to ask them first, and then show them how to do it, and make sure but if they just bow up and run off, or they, totally bow against me, then I'm going to kind of demand it. But the biggest thing that I've always told my proteges is that you can get into a horse and reprimand the horse, but it's what you do afterwards and how long you let that settle in your mind, what causes a great horse trainer versus a shitty horse trainer, or a horse trainer that struggles a lot. Because if you can get into a horse and make them understand that they can't get away with what they're trying to do, then, and be able to your whole body just relaxes right afterwards, and you can go right back to going, okay, we fixed that, it's time to go. That to me is the one of the biggest attributes. You can do 50% of your training right in a day, or 51%, and make progress, right? But if you're doing 75, 80%, you're making quicker progress. But we're all gonna screw up. And probably one of my favorite quotes from Conrad Burns, who was a senator in Montana for years, for several cycles through Reagan, and he was one of my mentors when I first started doing this political work. He was a high school educated Marine. He started the Northern Ag Network, and he's an auctioneer. He's great human being. But he said he was full of funny quotes, but the one that always stuck with me was, everybody does dumb things for 15 minutes a day. The trick is to not go over your quota. Right. So if you don't go over your quota doing stupid shit, you're gonna be all right. But that's in horse training, to me, that's the key, is to be able to be firm with a horse, but also be able to relax right afterwards. You see those people that get freaking mad and then they're whopping on the horse or doing something, spurring on them, or they hold a grudge for the next hour, and it doesn't do the horse any good. I teach that to all my youth kids that come over and ride. They get mad, their horse picks its head up and gets excited about something that's outside the arena or something, and they make a huge deal out of it compared to what you could do if you just went, okay, let's just say no, that's not what you're supposed to do, and then go on and just keep working on it. And it took me a lot of years to figure that out, to be honest, because I had to, when I was training early on. How old are you, Colton?
31.
Yeah. So when I was in your age bracket, I was riding horses that weren't supposed to be in the show pen. I was riding horses that nobody else wanted to ride, and I was taking them to the show pen and getting them ready. And it was hard for me for a long time to go from one side, which was just a total rank nut job of a horse, and then ride 4 or 5 of those in the morning to get them out of the way. And then I'd go to my good horses, or the horses that actually wanted to do something. I had to really concentrate on bringing myself into that frame of mind where I wasn't riding those horses the same way I was riding those other ones. Because those other ones were testing you. I mean, testing your, whether, bucking or running you into the wall or trying to rub you off or trying to do something, roll over or flip over. Or, I've had just about, luckily I've only broke a few bones, but I've had just about every accident a horse can throw at you, as far as throwing a fit and doing things like that, not wanting to be rode. So that temperament is to me is the key to all of it.
Mm-hmm.
Colton?
I'd say the question was like the number one quality or trait, or was that what it was, Daniel?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, having not grown up in this business and got into it, basically having to make a living while learning how to do it. I think like at the top of the list, the very first thing that came to mind for me is don't quit and figure it out. Right. And it's that can come across with a little bit of edge to it of like, well, just keep going, just keep going, just keep going. But it's not necessarily the pace. It kind of goes in tandem with what Dave was saying, which is, there's moments where you've got to bring that energy up and you've got to be able to pick the pace up, but then you also got to be able to scale it back down and just go back to a neutral place. And we're starting a bunch of wild Mustangs right now. And I was working with one right before we got on this call, and that horse is super reactive. He's cool. Like it looks like somebody's cutting stud got loose. And he's a really, really, literally neat animal, but it's like, he'll have a panic moment. And then when he's in that panic moment, to me, the most important thing, whether it's a horse that's just trying to screw off on you, trying to take control, or if they're nervous, and it's when they come back to you, when they think back to you of like, well, and I want to be in that state of mind that I can kind of be comforting and supportive to that horse when the brain does come back. But so many times, right, like that horse goes to get overreactive or emotional or pissed off or upset or trying to take control. And we got to do what we got to do to work with those horses. But I find the most important piece is the state of mind and the energy level that we have when that horse thinks back to you. Because if you're in a bad state and you're like, damn you son of a whatever, right, then the horse goes, well, I don't want to think back to you anymore, because when I came back to you mentally, you're in a really bad state that's being kind of aggressive. So then they want to go get away from you, right, in some form or fashion, whether it's, and so that particular piece of it to me is like, in these certain competitions that I've done or just training horses, I've never, since I didn't grow up on the back of a horse or on a ranch, I was just like, there's always guys that have better horses, that are more talented, that have done it longer than I have. But the one thing they can't control is how hard I work at it. And so if I just put the damn time in there and don't quit, and when I'm not sure what to do, I figure it out, whether that's on my own or I call somebody. I'm like, I'm at my wit's end. I'm out of tricks. Like, what do I do to help this horse? But just don't freaking quit, because I think so many people quit, and And that's such a, I think this is going to get a little long winded here, but like people give themselves too many choices, right? It's like, to me, there is no choice. The choice is to do whatever is necessary that has the horse's best interest in mind. And that's where I tell this to my interns all the time when they come through, which is, I'm like, so what'd you do with that horse today? And they're like, I did this, this, and this. I was like, okay, did the horse progress? Well, we kind of just did what we did yesterday. I'm like, well, what did the horse actually need you to do? Did the horse need you to just do a repeat? Because that's fine. Or did the horse need you to kind of take things to that next step? And so many people do what they feel makes them feel good. They want to stay in that comfort zone so they don't move forward. And to me, it's like there is only one choice. And it's the only choice is to do what the horse needs us to do in that instance, or to do what your business needs you to do, or do whatever you need to do personally to move your freaking life forward, whether that's physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. Like, but I think so many people give themselves too many choices. When you really look at it, it's like, what needs to be done? What exactly needs to happen right now in any scenario? And that's the only fucking choice in my brain. Like, but people want to default back into this comfort zone. And and it's just, to me, it's the tallest tale sign is why people don't move forward, right? Why their horses never progress, or they never progress, or why everything continues to be the same. And so just don't fucking quit is kind of my theory on it.
Yeah. I got my first, back in the 90s, late 80s, early 90s, I used to start a lot of thoroughbreds because I was up in the Northwest here in Eastern Washington in what they call the Okanagan area. And that area is almost all the ranches have Forest Service permits, and they're off the breaks of the Columbia. I mean, you might be a mile almost straight down to the Columbia River and have to bring cows and bulls up off of that. So a lot of those guys rode thoroughbreds. And I started a lot of thoroughbreds. And it was interesting to me because they're just a horse. I mean, they're just like any other horse. Started right or rode right, they're just a horse. So I have a deal I'm trying to put together, and I'm trying to work with some of the thoroughbred people, but they're a little bit standoffish to me over my history of promoting horse slaughter. But I want to do a challenge like we did with the wild spayed fillies. And did we lose Colton? Oh, there he is.
It'll be fun.
So I wanted to do a challenge like I did with the wild spayed fillies at Reno, that big deal we put on there, and it was very successful. Actually had the highest ratings on RFD TV that they'd ever had at that time. So for those 1 hour shows we did. And I want to do one with the thoroughbreds because, and it's interesting because the AQHA, I know a lot of people on the EC, and the president right now, Jim Hunt, which I got to give a shout out to Jim, first Native American to ever be the president of AQHA, first Native American to ever be on the EC of AQHA. Great human being, just an exceptional human being, and horseman. But he was talking about how back when I was doing this stuff early on, you go to a horse sale and there was lots of what we call yellow papers. They were the appendix bred horses. So half thoroughbred, half quarter horse, and you could take those horses and you go show them at an AQHA show, and if you got enough points, you could get their blue papers. You get their regular papers and get them registered. So we don't see a lot of that anymore, and it's funny because I was talking to him about this program the other night, and he said, "Well, we were just talking about this at the EC about how we need another 3 bars. We need another horse to come in because our gene pool is getting a little tight in the quarter horse world." And yeah, we're getting some really great horses now, and there's horses that are specialized and go do their job and do what they're supposed to do. But we don't have those outcrosses like we used to, and we need to get a little more in there. Well, it's funny because and what brought that up was I was telling him about this program, but also that I got an off the track thoroughbred from a friend of mine up here, and one of my big donors actually for Western Justice. He's a big rancher, but he owned Lucky Pulpit and, raised California Chrome, so he's had some success in the thoroughbred world. Well, I told him I wanted a filly, and I called the barn manager or the ranch manager, and he said, do you want a 2-year-old, a 3-year-old, a yearling? What do you want? And I'm like, you give me a yearling? Because they give them away. They give these thoroughbreds away. And I said, well, I want one that's not overly tall, not a giant. And I want a filly that's built right, not because some of them thoroughbreds, you look at them from the front and they look like both legs come out of the same hole, because they're so narrow. And I said, I want one that's built right, more quarter horse looking, but she can be, a decent size, but I don't want a huge one. Well, he finally found one that they had raced, and I really didn't want one off the track because I had a stigma in my head. All the horses I've rode in my life, I've never rode off the track thoroughbred. So I thought they were just going to be, nuts going forward, and I was going to have all these issues with it. Well, he calls me and he gets me this he tells me about this 3-year-old filly that had 6 starts. She had 2 seconds and a third, and then didn't place in the other 3. So she's not good enough, not fast enough, too laid back. And I went and got this mare, and I was a little hesitant because I'm thinking this might be a little more work than I have time to deal with. And she is probably the quietest horse on the place, the sweetest, and just a joy to be around. She doesn't know anything. When I got on her and started riding her a few weeks ago, I had to get her feet in shape because her feet went from the track onto irrigated pasture and just tore her feet up. So I went through a shoeing, did all that, and got her lined out. And now I'm riding her for the last few weeks, and I just treated her like it was a horse I was starting, just getting started. And because she knew nothing, she knew not how to steer unless you pulled her around or, whatever. And I don't steer that way. I keep them between the reins and teach them all that stuff and counterbending. And she has just come on and done really good. But being off the track, I didn't know what I had. This is where out thinking a horse and the situation, like what Colton's talking about, is a big deal. Because I went out and I just started riding her. And for the first 5 rides, I trotted her around slowly a couple times. That's it. Because I wanted to take the run out of her, the idea that she had to, when somebody was on her, she was just going to go run her wheels off or be pushed that way. I think I got pretty lucky because she's pretty quiet. She's more like a Seabiscuit kind of a mentality than one of them striped ass ape kind of a horses that come off the track. And she's doing really well. I go out there and I enjoy riding this horse. I got a really nice 2-year-old for the cow horse. It's really well bred for that I ride. So I've only got 2 horses of my own that I ride, but I enjoy going and riding this thoroughbred. And I'm hoping I can put this whole program together with the thoroughbred guys to do a big event at Reno at the Snaffle Bit Futurity like I did with the Wild Spade fillies and put something together to showcase the thoroughbreds. And I've got a whole game plan. It's pretty cool, but I think it'll be really fun. But yeah, that just kind of goes into that whole frame of mind of you gotta figure out the horse and let the horse do things, but you also got to be firm but fair. I've always, like I said, I've dealt with a lot of, they weren't wild horses, the ones I was dealing with, but they were wild. I mean, they were on a ranch, 44,000 acre ranch. There was 2 herds. There was, they didn't see people till they were 4 and 5. And so they were pretty much wild. They were pretty much feral horses. But I've had a hoof stuck on either side of my head, kicking at me, not knowing. And up until that point, all I'd ever had were horses that came to me that were halter broke, and that I learned a lot of lessons. Luckily, I didn't die doing it, dealing with those horses, and it taught me a lot. But you watch, in my mind, you watch horses and any good horse trainer or anybody with a couple brain cells clicking together that sees a herd mentality or gets around that kind of stuff, you watch horses, you see what they do to each other, and they reprimand and then they let go. And they do it hard. It's like I tell my clients when I'm telling them to spur their horse or kick their horse when they're being dead. You can't kick as hard as another horse is going to kick that horse if it's doing something wrong. So if it's doing something wrong, you better get after it a little bit and then leave it alone. But you got to leave it alone. And if you watch the herd dynamics, that's exactly what they do. They'll get after one. They'll get after one hard, and then they leave it alone. They just walk away. And that's what to me, that's the mentality of what the horses what they understand. So
we seem to have a pretty big pull within the industry, particularly the clinician side of it right now, toward this more emotional horsemanship kind of stuff and connection and all. And I really feel like it's a bad turn. Not all the emotions are good. Fear and anger and all of those things are emotions too. Every evil person you ever met likely felt very justified in what they were doing. And to me, kind of like y'all were saying, one of the biggest struggles you have as a horseman is controlling your emotions so that you stay consistent for the horse and that you're not in a position where any wind will blow you and things all go south in a heartbeat because you're having a bad day or whatever little things happen and affects your poor little feelings and emotions.
Yeah. I think being able to, like I said earlier, being able to just reprimand or deal with the situation and then let it go and not hold a grudge to that horse for doing it. And that's a really big thing too with non-pros, especially non-pros or even trainers that are training a horse. When you train a futurity horse from 2 years old to, the 3-year-old year, you have to be able to disengage from what you dealt with back as a 2-year-old, any issues you dealt with, and start building on all the great things that you have going on now and rely on that horse to be able to do that. You can't hold that grudge and hold it in your mind that this horse is going to do something chicken shit to you at some point. If you've done your job, then you're past that point.
Yeah, I know Daniel's going to move on here in a second, but I think that particular approach of is horsemanship, but it's life and it's everything that we'll probably end up talking about today, right? Which is like you have to deal with the problems, you're right. There's certain things that have to be dealt with, but you don't want to invest too much energy and time and effort into things that you don't want more of, right? And I think that a lot of times you go to deal with a problem, then someone doesn't let go of that issue. The horse comes back to them and they're still riding around the person's tight and tense because they haven't basically moved on from that moment. And then they wonder why the horse keeps doing that thing over and over because the human hasn't let go of it versus watch those horses, as you were saying, David, in a herd, and it's like they deal with it and then they go back to neutral state. And if the horse happens to try the same thing again, then they might reprimand its buddy again, but then they move on and life continues. And I think a lot of us get caught up on the things that we don't want and we invest too much time, effort, and energy, and we wonder why we get more of it. And it's like deal with the problems, but focus on the solution, right? Focus on where we want to actually go and invest the time, effort, and energy into the solution oriented of it. And certain things just go away with time. Like some things with horses, I've found it's not that big of a deal. It's a colt being a colt, right? Like have a little horse, you go to ask him to lope off and it kicks out at your leg. It's like, unless the horse is being malicious, like sometimes if I'm like, nope, the horse just did that, but then they went to lope, I'm going to focus on the horse loping around. Okay, cool. You made it into the lope. Let's focus on that. And 2-3 rides, it goes away. And I'm just not going to invest and turn it into an issue. But you have to have the experience, I do think, or have someone that can guide you with the experience that has seen the light at the end of the tunnel. Otherwise, you're like, if I don't deal with this, because there are certain things, if you don't deal with them, they'll get worse. Right. So it's finding that balance of when to deal with something and when not to invest the time, effort, and energy into it. So you can actually move on.
Yep. Someone who understands the map and can say, you are here. And
right.
It's either okay or or you better take the fork. Yep. On a scale of 1 to 10, how well can you back a trailer?
11.
Love it. The confidence. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, at least 10 out of 10. I mean, I can put a trailer just about anywhere I need to put it.
I kind of think we need some side competitions at a few of these shows because there's a consistent theme here, and yeah, I think that could be a little side money out behind the arena on a Friday evening or something.
I can tell you a really funny, colorful story about the 2000 or the 99 World Show. So they used to have all the parking in the back, and there was at Oklahoma City, and there was these tiers of all these trailers, and they were a little bit diagonal, so you pulled in, you pulled out. It was pretty easy to park there. Well, we were going out to go work cattle that day, and I'm not going to mention his name, but a very high-powered pleasure horse trainer, very wealthy guy, and he was a trainer, had a lot of big clients, won several world championships. He had parked right in front of our trailer on that, and there was only really enough room to get in and out right there. So he had pulled up in the middle of the night, parked right there. Well, we're at 4 o'clock in the morning, getting ready to go drive down into Texas to go work cattle at another ranch. And we get out there and we're pissed because we're trying to figure out how to get the trailer out of there. And so I'm mad. I'm young. I don't have any chew in me. I just gotten a chew and I hadn't had any coffee yet because we were trying to get to the gas station to get some coffee. We get out there and we're pretty pissed. So I take a couple fresh horse turds and mine is splattered him on the side of his name on the side of his big fancy trailer. I mean, it was about as fancy a trailer as there was there. And then it got pretty I got to the point where it was morning time and I had to get something accomplished. Well, I decided to open up the back of his horse compartment and I did it right there. And that went around the world show for the whole time because there was some things going on back then where people were cutting tails, they were doing stuff to other people's horses, and so that, I mean, it was drama at the World Show, and if people that were at that 99 World Show, I mean, Frank Merrill and all those guys that were running the AQHA back then, they might see this, and I doubt he'll sit down and watch the podcast. But anyway, it was quite the stir at the whole World Show for probably the 2 weeks that it was going on. It was pretty entertaining to watch. We never admitted to it, but
until now.
Yeah.
Statute of limitation on poop crimes has run out. I think you're good. All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead. We're going to wrap up the lightning round questions with this one. So, favorite words of wisdom.
I don't really. My favorite words of wisdom is I got a lot of them, but you got to be tough. You just got to be tough, and you got to push hard. I mean, I think if you're present in life, and I've chose a path that I have a little different frame of mind because I chose a path that's not very lucrative, as far as what I do. But I've always hated a bully, and growing up, I got in fights. I never started a fight, but I got in fights because I hated to see somebody else get bullied. And even to this day, it's hard for me if I see something going on to not be the guy that steps in and stops it from going on. And I think that's the main reason I do what I do, because a lot of people ask me why I do what I do, because it's not, like I said, it's not a lucrative business to be in. And I could be doing a lot of other things that would make me a lot more money. But do what makes you feel good and do what you enjoy doing, and you'll never work a day in your life, and that's you hear that people say that kind of stuff, but for me, it's very true. I enjoy what I do. There's a lot of people that would hate doing what I do because it can be frustrating. It can be all of those kind of emotions, but I do it because I want to do it and I enjoy it. And I'm a natural born salesman. So I look at the political world like it's all one big sale. You have to go out and you have to make these people understand what's going on, and you got to sell it to them, right? So I look and I enjoy helping other people and protecting other people. So I don't know if that came, it was in me before I was in the Marine Corps, but I know the Marine Corps dang sure helped that be a lot more prevalent in my mental state. But that's I guess do what you want to do. Do what makes you feel good. And I've had people who have come up to me that are in my age bracket. I'll be 60 next year, but they've come up to me, and the orthopedic surgeon, friend of mine that's an orthopedic surgeon, been very successful at that, has a lot of money. And he said to me on multiple occasions that he would trade his life for mine in a heartbeat, because what we do makes a difference. And what he doesn't feel like he ever made a difference. And I'm like, well, you help people, you help people and fix them. But that to me is probably the best advice I could give anybody is be present. And what would like the kids, my boys I waited a while to have kids. So I've got a 24-year-old and a 20-year-old. And I tell them to be like Joe Rogan or Dana White talk about being a beast. Just be a beast in this world, in this life right now. Just be a beast. That doesn't mean be an asshole or a tough guy. It means be a beast. Go, whatever you're doing, be the best at it you can be, and work hard, and you'll be successful. And that's what I try to instill in my boys. And I think I've been fairly successful with them because they're both doing really well. But you have to be engaged, and you have to really want it and work hard, because right now there's not a lot of those kids out there. Yep. I mean, I think our world, the ranching, the rodeo, the world of agriculture we're going to be the leaders of the world. Our kids are going to be the leaders of the world at some point, because these other kids that are living in the city and growing up with their iPhones from 3 years old on are not going to be, they're not going to be capable, mentally and physically, of being a world leader. And it's got to be, and my one of my favorite, if you want to quote Kamala with her Venn diagram deal, it's not really a Venn diagram, but it's kind of is, but it's strong men create good times create weak men create hard times create strong men. We're in that weak men create hard times. We're in that spot. And the strong men are coming back now. And there's a lot of young kids that are out there, and you see it all over the internet, and you see it in a lot of different aspects. There's a lot of kids coming back, young men that are going, we need to be fighters. Mm-hmm. So,
well, I'm a little disappointed, Dave. 10 out of 10, I would have bet you were about to quote Full Metal Jacket in some shape or form right there, but I'll accept that as an answer anyway. Colton, favorite words of wisdom.
This is an old quote I heard my freshman year at college, and it was to avoid criticism, say nothing, do nothing, be nothing. And it's so simple. And a lot of times people right now are focused on being nice and not ruffling feathers, and and people think that that's being nice. And I think it's one of the most cruelest things you can do, right, is to just have yes men in your life that are constantly like, yeah, you're on the right track, and just kind of appeasing whatever thought, whatever action that you're up to. And I think that goes with, men having their own inner circle, or with your spouse, or with a parent. Like, you need to tell people what actually needs to be said, not just what you think their feelings want to be pandered to. Because I think that's absolutely staggeringly cruel. If you know that you need to say something else and you don't, it's like, do you actually like that person? Because if I didn't like that person, I might tell them what they want to hear, because they'll just continue down that path and it'll lead them to a terrible place. And so I think it's just do the right thing. And that whole, to avoid criticism, say nothing, do nothing, be nothing, has been something that's always stuck with me, of like kind of a little guiding force on, do I need to say, and it's like David said, he's like, don't be an asshole about it. Right. And sometimes when you're trying to figure out that balance, sometimes you are an ass, and it's like, yeah, that may not have been the intention, but then you just learn from it, and don't be an asshole next time. But go at it. The thing I've tried to focus on recently is to build bridges, not barriers. And it's a bit of a balancing act when you're talking about controversial issues, is to not burn bridges while also taking on those controversial issues. So that's something I've been trying to figure out here recently, with a lot of this stuff. But it's if you just want to be another fly on the wall and not do anything and not contribute, don't say anything, don't do anything. Just exist, suck up some oxygen, do your time on earth, and go on. But it's like, man, I think God put us all here with a purpose. And when there's this, I don't know if you guys know a guy named by Ed Milet. He has a pretty big podcast, and I've listened to his stuff, and he has this, he shares this kind of potential vision per se, that's like, hey, when I die, and it's kind of like a make-believe scenario, but he's like, if I die and I go to heaven and I meet God, and God says, Ed or Colton or David or Daniel, he's like, before you go in, I'd like to introduce you to the man that I created you to be. And he introduces you to yourself at the fullest potential of what he sets you out to do here on earth. And when I heard that kind of visualization of, man, what if that were to happen, if I was to die and go to heaven and to be introduced to the man that I was meant to be, I don't want to be a stranger to that person. And that means that every day I've got to take the actions to do what I was actually put here on earth to do, regardless if it's comfortable or not, right? To do what actually needs to be done. And so that whole thing means that for me, I can't avoid criticism, right? If I want to avoid criticism, I'm just going to stay comfortable. I'm going to avoid all the things that I might actually be on earth here to do. And I think all of us have our own avenue. I mean, David, you're in a very unique area of the industry. And so it's interesting. Like, so that's just kind of like how I've structured those two, that quote, and then the little potential, at the end of the game per se, to keep me pushing towards my fullest potential. Because that's I don't have fears, but like I don't want to miss the mark on living up to the fullest potential that I was put here to do. So
that's great. Yeah, I have an interesting dynamic for me on that vein of not not saying what's on your mind. I have a little bit of a mouth vomit problem, so I don't have the hold back in me that keeps me from saying what I believe, and that is it's hurt me in ways with people, because most people can't handle that, or a lot of people can't handle it, or they look at it like it's not PC, or it's not the right thing to do, or you're not gonna be able to get through with DC or whatever. Because I've been by some pretty big players in the quarter horse world that were in positions of authority that have made this mantra that I'm too redneck for DC. Because and when they say that, it's because I'm too forward. I don't dance around a subject, and I call people out. I don't care what side of the aisle they're on. If they're in the wrong, I'm going to call them out. I'm going to tell them what they're doing and why they need to not be in that scenario in my view. So yeah, it's only Dave Duquette's view, but it's not, it's my view, and I'm going to say it. I'm not going to dance around it for the most part. I've tempered that some, but the interesting part is during some of the meetings at AQHA, there's people that said, well, Dave's too redneck for DC. Well, I got defended by one of those members. He stood up and he went on about things that I forgot I've done, that I tell him about. And he rattled off all this stuff that I've done in DC. And he goes, well, what have you guys done? What is this person? What's our lobbyist done? Well, tell me all the things. And he goes, I think maybe we need a little more redneck in DC. And that's, for me, I can go to the halls of Congress and walk around, and staffers and people in the hallways know who I am. And they come up and talk to me. But it's because I am so open with my feelings, and they appreciate that. They know that about me. They know if I go into a meeting that they're gonna get a truth bomb and something's gonna come out. So I don't have to worry about that stuff anymore. I go, do I try to temper it, not be an asshole or not come across an asshole? Hell yeah, I do. But when I first started going to DC, I was naive enough to believe that if I went in and showed everybody proof of what I was saying was true, that we could change the world, right? We could just change everything. Well, I was pretty naive, because you go into DC and it doesn't matter how much proof you have. If you don't know the right protocol or the right people, you have a hard time. That's the swamp. That's part of the swamp. You have to know you're either greasing the skids or you're doing whatever to get that done. I've never operated that way. We were able to effectively do things, especially when I started working for Forrest Lucas. I'd been doing this stuff for 5 years before then. But with Forrest Lucas behind me, it was a little different dynamic when I walked in the room, and Forrest was right there with me, or people knew I was Forrest guy, so that was that helped me out a bunch. But now I have a reputation to be able to get things accomplished. So
as Jordan Peterson says, you have to risk being offensive in order to think. And that's why we have a First Amendment. A lot of people these days seem to think there is a right to not be offended, and that's total bullshit. There is no such thing. You in fact have a duty to offend at certain times. Like Colton was saying, a doctor that won't tell you you have cancer is a shitty doctor. You gotta say the hard thing and then recognize the problem and deal with the problem. And if you're not doing that, you are not virtuous. You are just a coward. It's as simple as that. Well, normally on this deal, we award points and all that stuff. We're just going to forego that and get on into the conversation at hand. So, Dave, I'll start with you. Why don't you kind of give us just a brief picture of what Western justice does?
So the best way I can explain what Western justice is we're, the horse industry used to be this giant, what I would call it, this giant. I put it in a pyramid kind of a thought process for people because it seems to work well. And at the top of that pyramid, if you took the original 10 million horses we had, domestic horses in the United States, you round that or use that number. The pyramid was the top 3% was, money wise, and 3% of that was the thoroughbred world, then the show world. So in the top 20% was all the high dollar rodeo horses, the show horses, and the thoroughbred world, and all these other little groups involved. And then you take 80% of the horse industry was mostly the Western style horses. 70 plus to 80, almost 80% was the Western horses. And what I consider Western horses, anything that's not a jumper or a dressage horse or those kind of horses, or the gaited horses, those kind of horses that are out there. So we were we were sitting at the largest form of, or the largest demographic in the horse industry by far. And we were ill represented in DC. I figured that out the first year I started going over there in DC. And I didn't pay any attention to politics until 2006 when they started shutting down the slaughter plants. I had no idea, didn't pay any attention. I was at the World Show, saw Frank Merrill, Bill Brewer, all these guys huddled around Bob Avila's bar over there. And I had heard that they were going to shut down the plants. Well, I walked over there. I'm just some young, dumb horse trainer. I walk over there and get right in the middle of the whole EC for AQHA, all having a cocktail at Avila's bar at his stalls. And I said, what are we going to do about this, guys? This is going to ruin the industry. It's going to ruin horse welfare. It's going to cause a major shit show. Well, Frank Merrill, for a long time, I thought he was just he didn't like me because he jumped in my face. And I don't know if you know Frank, but he's a little guy, but he jumps in my face and just started going on. He was really mad about the fact that this happened on his watch as the AQHA president and, all of that. And he said, Dave, there's nothing we can do about it. We're just going to have to figure out how to live with it. And at that moment, in my mind, I'd sold horses to Penny Knight of Nike. I've sold, I've been around all these big players, Alice Walton, Linda Mars. I've been around all those people. I thought, I know just enough big people and I got just enough tenacity. I'm going to do something about this. So I started in on it, and quickly, by 2008, I was the face of trying to keep horse slaughter in the United States, and which was detrimental in a way, but it got me going, but I wasn't afraid of it. I knew I was right, so I wasn't afraid of it. So I started in on that. So that's where I got started on all this stuff. But Western Justice has more from, I started a group called United Horsemen back then. I had a lot of people behind me. It was going good, but everybody was so afraid. And I talk about this all the time. Everybody was so afraid. They were like, hey, they're like pushing me. It was like they were all behind me, pushing me, but they wouldn't poke their heads out to say, I'm with it. Even the AQHA, nobody would say we're with him on this because this is an issue we don't want to be associated with. And so anyway, I was pretty much on my own doing all this stuff. So, but I had supporters, but they were not willing to come out. And if everybody would have come out back then, it would have been done in a heartbeat. But because there's so many, and I say this a lot, if you put the Western horse world, the rodeo world, and the ranching community together, there's no bigger, more financially well-heeled demographic in the United States. I think we could be huge. So back to your question about Western Justice and what it is, the best way I can equate it to people is what NRA is to guns, we are to the Western lifestyle, and our rural America and the Western lifestyle. So that's what we do. We protect all of that we're not a one-trick pony. We've got the whole from legislative stuff to saving a ranch here in Central Oregon from a $35 million lawsuit brought by the DOJ on false claims of their hired men started a fire that burned up 55,000 acres and didn't have to. The ranch actually was up there, the ranch hands, and they could have put the fire out within a couple acres. But the Forest Service actually has a unwritten, unlawful rule that says that they can, let it burn and just try to keep it from going up, mitigate damage to private property and that kind of stuff. Let it burn. That's their forest management plan out here in the Northwest and all over the United States, really. But the 7 Western states have almost all of the public lands, the BLM, the Forest Service. There are Forest Service grounds in other states, but very little BLM. And we have all of this public lands out here. Nevada's still I think 78%, somewhere right in there, public lands. So there's a lot of issues that we deal with, and like I tell people that, you know, anything that affects ranching, whether it comes out of the USDA, the Interior Department, or the EPA, all affects just about everybody in the United States at some point. So even though our focus is very limited to ranching, the Western horse world, and the rodeo world, it's not. It affects what we do, and the things that we fight against affects everybody in the United States at some level. So it's a pretty monumental task, but it's also keeps us from being, you know, keeps us focused down that one lane that we're trying to stay in. And where I got back, going back to the Western world, was the Western horse world, was 80% or close to 80% of the domestic horses. They're very ill represented in DC. The American Horse Council basically is run by the Jockey Club, which is that 3%, the thoroughbreds. So they were the ones that stopped horse slaughter and promoted that. They were the ones that they thought that was going to keep the animal rights groups off of the tracks. And if you look all the way back to 06, they made, I'm comfortable saying this about the thoroughbred, or the Jockey Club and the American Horse Council. They made a deal with the devil, and they said, okay, if we go against horse slaughter, then we're going to, then you guys got to stay off the tracks. Well, if you look at the press on the tracks, just recently in the last few years, there's been some press come out where PETA says something or ASPCA says something, but they don't go attack them like they do the Tennessee Walkers or the gaited horses or the Western horse world. They don't go attack them that way, or the rodeo world. They go and they say, oh, well, this is bad that you had 24 horses killed at Santa Anita, you know, over the course of 2 months or whatever. Had, you know, they don't go after them like they did. They totally did not say anything about the thoroughbred world at all. And they used to say a lot. Prior to that, they would say a lot. They made a deal with the devil. They went against horse slaughter, and then the animal rights groups left them alone. That was the whole reason we lost. I mean, because the horse industry did not back it up. And it was because of the American Horse Council and the Jockey. So with that being said, we are the protection group of the Western horse industry, which is the largest group in the United States. And we should be the largest group of horse group in the world, really. And this organization should be one of the most powerful lobbies in the United States. And we're not, because the hard part is most people that do this kind of work don't sit at their computer and look at all the stuff we put out, or social media, or they don't get into doing anything that's going to affect and help their lifestyle. So where we're, 10,000 members strong, we should be, 250,000 members strong. And that's the hard part for me. We should be that strong and that strong of a lobby to be able to go stop anything that's going to cause a problem. And we're going to get into all those problems down the road. But basically, that's what we are in a nutshell. Anything that has to do with ranching or the Western horse world, rodeo world, we're the ones that are out there fighting. With like this, you can see the deal of the Western Sports Industry Coalition right there. That's a groundbreaking and historic organization our coalition brought together. And none of those groups ever worked together because they were all competing organizations. So this is the first time the horse industry in the Western world has ever come together to fight one thing, and that we've built that to fight the ban of rodeo in LA, which has been going on for 4 years now.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, that's part of what we're trying to do with this podcast. I don't think many people in the horse industry recognize that we do actually have a common enemy out there, and that enemy doesn't play fair. And the solution to any problem, the first step is to recognize the problem. So that is what we're trying to achieve. Colton, I'll give you a minute if you want to just kind of talk about what you do real quick, and I'll let you tell your own story of why you're joining us on this podcast here this morning too, if you want.
Sure thing. Yeah, you bet. So yeah, on the horsemanship side of things, like we teach clinics around the country, and primarily my focus these days is we've got our Cavi community. It's an online platform for people that want to develop their horsemanship. And that's kind of my effort to help support people with their horsemanship and their horses and those sorts of things. Because a lot of my time right now is split in two directions. One is the professional horseman school, which is helping the next generation or those that want to build their career as horse trainers come into the ranch, develop their skills, learn the business aspects of it. That way you can actually build a brand, run your finances, know how to do your marketing, and actually make a living in this business. Because it's a $122 billion business. It's probably bigger than that now because that number is a few years old, but it's a massive industry. And the idea that we all got to die broke, I'm so sick and tired of hearing it. And it really, what pushed us that direction is I got a lot of friends that burnt out just because they are really talented with horses, but couldn't quite make the business side work. So we have the professional horseman school for those that basically need help with the skills and the business side. And then for other professionals that are already established, we have a platform called Horse Business Manager and a community group around that we're getting ready to launch next week called Horse Business Builders. And that platform, Horse Business Manager, is an all-in-one platform where horse business owners can manage and run their business from one single place, from doing your payments to running your marketing, your website, social media, being able to do courses, memberships. We've built that originally for my own training business and and all the things that we needed. And then other people were like, hey, what the hell are you using? How can we use what you're using? Because it's efficient, it's affordable, and all those sorts of things. And so I definitely did not get in. I got in this whole deal to go out and train horses and enjoy time with horses. And somehow we backed ourselves into a software business. And so that's not exactly what we sought out to do, right? But it's about doing what's going to help the number one mission that I had because my journey actually started after horse slaughter got banned, and I wanted to help as many horses and people as possible. And as that has gone, it went from like training horses to teach people to help their horses. Now, hey, if I can help as many professionals run their businesses more efficiently, we have more qualified professionals that are still sticking around to do better jobs with these horses, to support our industry, so that together we all rise and we all get better. And so that's a big focus of what we're doing now. Yeah. And I guess, Daniel, you're asking as far as how I landed here to talk with.
Are you freezing up?
Yeah, You guys froze. Can you still hear me?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, you guys froze on my end, but if you can hear me, we'll roll with it. And so, yeah, as far as how we landed here, I guess we got the cat out of the bag a little bit, and I've started tackling some controversial issues over the last year or so on horse slaughter and some different things on social media, which certainly opened up a can of worms. But I think it's about saying what needs to be said, and that then in turn got invited to be on Clinton Anderson's Uncut and Real Raw podcast, which certainly brought us a little bit of PR along with that and the whole topic of that conversation, right, was on controversial issues in the horse industry. And I think that we need to be having these difficult conversations in a logical format. And because we have problems, as we've already mentioned in this industry, we have problems that need to be dealt with. There's a lot of people, and one of the most common themes that I think we probably could talk about is the fact that when I brought up issues like horse slaughter or different things in the business, people are like, you're making this up. This isn't true. This isn't a threat. People aren't trying to take this business away from us. You're just doing this to get attention. And there's a lot of people in our industry that actually don't realize how many other entities are fighting to take this lifestyle away from us. And I get pretty loud and rambunctious about it at times. And people are like, you're just amped up over nothing and you're full of hot air and you're just whatever. I'm like, listen, there does need to be a sense of awareness to rise to realize, for people to realize how big of a threat there actually is against the lifestyle that we live, because just because you don't see it doesn't mean it's not there. And the worst thing that can happen is not to see the threat, or to even to know the threat's there and not do anything about it, because this is a lifestyle that we all love, right? I don't care whether you ride dressage horses, if you ride jumping horses, if you ride ranch horses, like all of us can come together on the common ground that we love the lifestyle that we have with horses. And Dave was saying earlier, like, like a bully, right? And it's like, that's what's happening, right? Is that the folks that are trying to go through ELD mandates and trying to do all these crazy back-ended ways to kind of fasten us down, they're not fighting fair. They're not fighting clean, right? And we've got to be able to stand up with a backbone against it and actually do something about it, which is what Western Justice is doing, thankfully. I've just tried to raise some awareness, right? I've done some social media videos that have gotten quite a few views, and that's great, right? I think as a horse industry, we're all want to be, I'm just going to go out and train my horses. It's like social media is a tool, man. Like social media is such a blessing to raise awareness and to get your message out there. Everyone's like, I don't like to market. I don't want to sell people stuff. And it's like, marketing is messaging. Like, what is your message that you want to get out there? And, and so I'm sure we're going to get into the thick of it here pretty quick.
Yeah, I'm just gonna say here, just full disclosure, Colton is a friend of mine. He's a straight up good dude, and I have been using the Horse Business Manager platform he was talking about here. That is what my bit course and all of that is on. And I would definitely tell you, if you are a horse trainer who's kind of struggling, you could not hardly do better than going to him and his wife Meredith, who is also an integral part of their deal. She's the one that's going to be solving your tech problems and dealing with you when you're calling her crying in the fetal position in the shower, not sure what to do next. So definitely give them a look for that. And definitely noteworthy, he's a guy of faith and balls who does say that you have cancer and you need to deal with it, and we need more of that. I feel obligated at this point to throw out a statistic. This may be one of the good things that the American Horse Council has done, but they have funded some surveys, kind of census type things. And here's a statistic that should scare the absolute hell out of you. In 2007, so this is right around the time horse slaughter ended, we had 10.4 million horses roughly in the U.S. They just did another of these tabulations in 2023. And at that point, we were down to 6.2 million horses in the U.S., which is a loss of 40.4% of the total horse population in the United States in less than 20 years. 40% of all of the horses in the U.S. no longer exist. And all of that in an effort to save less than 1% that the slaughter industry and the humane processing industry was taken care of. So you've talked a little bit about slaughter, Dave. Is there, we got other things to talk about beyond that, but is there any particular point you want to hammer on real quick with regard to slaughter?
I do, because part of what killed, I did all the research back, in 2006, 8, 10. And if you went back through the Jimmy Carter economy, because the animal rights groups will try to tell you that the economy, the crash is what killed the horse industry. But if you go back to Jimmy Carter's time, when there was gas lines, and Colton's not old enough for this, but you might remember it, but the gas lines in the late 70s, early 80s, where, it was just horrible economy. Jimmy Carter had screwed everything up big time. Well, you go back to that.
There was record inflation. Bread cost 40% more than it was. Does that sound familiar to anybody right at this particular moment in time? Okay, go ahead. Sorry, I had to say that.
So if you go back and look at the slaughter horse records and the horse industry never took a hit like it did in 2008 to 10, because the slaughter market, you saw the numbers go up a little bit. They went up from 250,000 to 350,000 that year, but the horse industry stayed strong, and it powered through. and came out of the other end really well. If you look at what happened in 2008, we are, with the crash, 2007, all the plants are gone. 2008, horses went from, instantly. And I'll tell you what happened with me. I sold a lot of horses here. So a lot of the big trainers, Avila was still up here in the Northwest. All of these guys were up here. They would send me a lot of their rejects. So I would get a lot of the rejects or the horses they needed to sell to get them gone. So I would get those horses here, and I might have, I might do $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 in business a month selling horses. Now I wasn't making that. It was, I'd make a commission off of those sales, kind of a deal, because I kept and that's why everybody used me, because I had a really good clientele, but I kept very straight books. And if one of their clients sent me a horse, they paid board and training until I sold the horse, and then I got a 10% commission. That was it. And I never screwed anybody. I didn't try to overinflate prices to get a bigger commission or anything like that. So I was selling a lot of horses. And those horses were, like I said, I was doing 50 to 70,000 a month through my account and was rolling hard doing all that. And then once 2008 hit and they shut down the plants, horses went from being an asset to a liability. I kid you not, I went from 50 to 70,000 down to 5,000 a month coming in. And it was almost like an instant. But if you think about that pyramid that I was talking about, and that's the way I explain to people, that pyramid, the top 30%, 40% is going to stay solid because they're all the expensive horses. They're the horses that people use to go do things with, all that. But that base was gone right then. People went from owning an asset to a liability. That's why horses were getting turned loose all over. You go to a horse sale and you go in and watch the horse sale and come out and there's 5 horses tied to your trailer. Have no idea what they are or where they came from. And things were going on like that all over the country, right? So that was the big demise. And if you go with like the Seattle and our King and Pierce counties in Seattle, Tacoma, the Northwest, and a lot of people from back east or wherever have no idea what the horse market was up there. It was unreal in the Northwest here. And that's why Avila and all those guys were up here. And the horse market was very vibrant. If you drove around where I grew up, there was, if somebody had a quarter acre and a place to put a little pasture or a barn shed, there was a horse there. You couldn't drive, there wasn't 3 places that in a row that didn't have horses unless it was a housing development. And that amount of horses we had more horses per square mile in King and Pierce counties than any place in the nation for several years. There was quarter horse shows going on every weekend in Oregon, Washington, Idaho. Everywhere you wanted to go, there was horse shows. And now you drive around those same areas, you're hard pressed to find a horse. So that to me, it took the small guy out. It took the young people or the middle of the road, the lower end people that were horse enthusiasts that wanted a horse and couldn't afford one anymore. It's taken all those out. So now it's becoming more of a higher end blue collar to a rich person's industry. And that's where, these sales that are going on right now, where the horse sales are through the roof, are built on that kind of to me, it's built on a false premise. And when we had that, and I tried to explain this to a lot of people back then, and I even sat with Carol Rose and talked to her about it one time, because there was people that would go, "Why are you on this horse slaughter kick?" And I go, "You know why?" Because I said, "You see all these sponsors in this arena, all the saddle makers, all the bit makers, all the different supplies that are out there." I said, "You see all these people that are sponsors. What are you going to do for sponsors when all of those people go away, because that base, it wasn't the people they were giving the saddles to go ride them, like the high-end trainers, or giving them boots, or giving them, whatever, so that they would wear them, so other people would wear them. It was all those people in that 80 or that, 60% of the horse industry that wanted to be like those people. Those were the customers. Those were the people that kept those businesses afloat. How many saddle makers have you seen go away? How many tack stores? How many, all of the different aspects of the horse industry that have gone away? I mean, we're in a crisis right now for large animal vets. I mean, there's a crisis out there right now. And I don't know if you guys have seen it where you're at, or if you're lucky and you got some, decent age vets that haven't timed out yet. But the veterinarians and the organizations that run those veterinarians, like the AVMA and the AAEP, it's an odd dynamic, because over the time that I've been doing this kind of work, we used to have a bunch of great horse vets in the AAEP. Now it's a bunch of multi-animal, small animal, sometimes do a horse kind of people running those groups. And we're in a pickle. I mean, we're in a pickle, and that's one of the things that people don't even realize what's going on that deal. And then
the statistic on that right now is about 1 in 100. So 1% of vet school students go into large animal, and within 5 years of getting out of school, 50% of those have switched to small animal. And like you said, we're about to have a major shortage of attrition, because your average large animal vet is 50 to 65. And as they retire, there is not enough people coming behind them to replace them, by not even close. Like we're going to have a major shortage coming up. So just throw in the numbers there.
Yeah. And that for me, it's the horse industry as a whole has gone down, because everybody used to complain about the backyarders. And when I was doing the horse slaughter stuff, it was interesting, because the animal rights groups would say, well, if you just stop breeding 5%, that would get rid of the problem. Okay. When I was sitting at a big deal we called Summit of the Horse, we did at the South Point in Vegas back in 2009, the guy that was there for the AQHA was Tom Persicino, and he handed me a notepad, because I asked him, I said, how far down are we on registered foals? And he handed me a napkin with the writing on, with the numbers wrote on there. And we were, in 2 years, they were already down, 40% in registered foals within 2 years. And then it just kept going and going and going. Every year it was getting more and more. So we're finally in a spot where people are starting to breed, but there's no more of those people that I shouldn't say there's no more. There's very few of those people that just raise horses at home and aren't trying to do it for a living kind of a deal. And that's where we're running into problems, because that's where we're running into problems with the average person can't afford a horse anymore. So when you can't afford that base that props up all your sponsors, you can see the tidal wave of what that causes. And that's why when I went into, when I was working for Forrest gave me a bank account and a certain amount of money to go start sponsoring horse shows. And in 2013, I sponsored the first one, 2013. That was the Snaffle Bit Futurity, which is now in Fort Worth. But I went in and did that one. And then the next year we did the Stallion Stakes for the cutting. We got the contract, I want to say in 14 or 15 for the World Show. And the AQHA came to me, and here's how bad it got for those folks. So Delta Airlines and some of these other groups, whatever it was that was the AQHA World Show sponsor, title sponsor, they would have the AQHA World Show used to be an amateur week and an open week, so it was back then just hordes of people. at the AQHA World Show. Well, when the whole thing hit, the economy and the horse slaughter shut down, they lost all their sponsors to the point where they came to me, and they used to get 300,000 per week to be the title sponsor. And then they came to me and they were trying to get, 250, 300 for, Lucas Oil to do this. And I said, no, we're not, Horse won't buy that. I said, we're not going to go sponsor that for that much money. And it ended up, we actually sponsored the AQHA World Show and the Super Horse and all of that. We were the main sponsor, title sponsor of both weeks for $100,000. So that's how desperate the situation was. Now, I don't know if I'm going to piss people off by telling you guys all that, or telling that out loud, but I don't really care. It is what it is. The economy was bad. Everybody needs to own up to the fact that everything was bad, and everybody was having a hard time. So we were able to do something that, and prop up the industry and help out for a lot less than what would have been before. But that's how far down the horse industry had gone before we started climbing back out of this hole and finally get to where we're at now in this market that we're in. But if you look at the base is gone. And you could go through the AQHA World Show. It used to be, a destination for 2 weeks for people to go to the World Show. It was like their vacation. And you'd go through the trade show, and you could, you were dodging people walking through the trade show, kind of like at NFR's, at Cowboy Christmas. That's how many people were there, watch, participate, and be a part of it. The last, the years that I think it was 6 years, 5 or 6 years we were the title sponsor of the World Show. You could go across the way to that big building they put the trade show in. You could roll a bowling ball down any aisle, not hit anybody. It was that barren. Mm-hmm. Some people blame it on the schedule. Some people, I'm sure there was a lot of things that were causing that problem. But my point is, where's all the people that support the sponsors and the vendors? They're not in the horse business anymore. So why would they go to the World Show and make it a big deal to go watch people, show their horses or go watch the open riders anymore? They just don't. And that's where the horse industry took a huge dive as far as I'm concerned.
This was a pretty long interview, going almost 4 hours, and I just wanted to give y'all a little bit of a break. So we're going to split it into 2 parts. We're going to end this one right here, and then we'll bring you the next part next week.
We'll see you next week for another episode of Adult Onset Horsemanship. I've been your host, Daniel Dauphin.